let's work together first. And I said, okay, well, ultimately I just asked Gary, I was like, okay, well, how do you convince someone that has everything to give you a shot, right? Which is a big question, right?
That's a great question. Peter Saddington, your big game hunter. And guys, we have our sights on someone special today.
Only a mother could invest in this idea.
Made this like super artistic.
That is actually absolutely correct. And that's a very, very astute assessment, actually.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of VC Hunting with me, your big game hunter, Peter Saddington. I am super excited today. Super excited. I have a man named SHAWN Chang, who is a partner at ConsenSys Labs, seed stage, focused on decentralization and decentralized protocols, which frankly, he can't get a whole lot by me because I know a lot about this stuff. So Shawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Hello, all those out there watching this right now. It's a pleasure to be here and have this conversation.
Awesome. Well, let's just jump right in. We obviously want to learn about the untold stories of venture capital, which you've been in for a long time, but you didn't start there. You started out with Razorfish and BBDO, and from there you connected with a pretty big name in the self-help, inspirational world, social media world, Gary Vaynerchuk, who started Wine Library and then became an international sensation for his own personality. And from there, you moved on to ConsenSys. So tell us, what attracted you to venture capital? What led you to being in venture capital? And certainly tell us a little bit about how you got hooked up with VaynerMedia and Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I had started working with startups back all the way at Razorfish. So the very first startup that I ever started to interact with was a little company called Charity Water. And
Ooh.
I just caught the bug of Scott Harrison and was so inspired by him and how he built and scaled a nonprofit to transform how people gave and to just really increase the accountability and transparency. At BBDO, I started working with startups to kind of help marry their bleeding edge kind of capabilities along with big companies like GE and Lowe's and HBO and do some really exciting things, especially in New York, Silicon Alley. Advertising was kind of the thing that really set New York off, right? Before consumer goods and products, before we had Rent the Runway or Glossier or any of these other things, like we had ad tech. And New York really, took that because of Madison Avenue. And so in meeting Gary, I met Gary through an old friend that I worked with at BBDO, a guy named Jeff Greenspan. Shout out to Jeff. Thanks so much. He connected me. And Jeff was, at the time, I think, chief creative officer at BuzzFeed. I was just telling him, man, I want to do more with startups. I spend maybe 40% of my day. I want it to be 100. What do you think? And he's like, well, I know this guy named Gary V. And I was like, oh, yeah, I've heard of Gary. And at the time, he and his brother AJ had just started VaynerMedia, and we're looking for folks with a few more years of agency experience. So when I joined, it was around 200. By the time I left, it was over 1,000.
Wow.
And basically the big kicker was when I first met Gary, I said, Gary, I'd love to do more with startups. You're a super angel, right? I mean, his first 3 investments were Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr.
I know.
Uber, Birchbox, Buddy Media, Wildfire, like
you got
Gary.
Kind of lucky, I guess, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Gary, along with shout out to Phil, who had been there since the very beginning, like as his right-hand man, like they just knew what would hit, and just the attention economy and before things had started to work. And so when I first took the job, Gary was like, let's work together first. And I said, okay, well, ultimately I just asked Gary, I was like, okay, well, how do you convince someone that has everything to give you a shot, right? Which is a big question, right?
That's a great question.
Like, yeah, I mean, he doesn't need anything from me. He gets hundreds, if not thousands, of people reaching out to him every year. he can hire any sort of Penn, Harvard, Stanford grad. He can, like, he doesn't need, you know, Joe Schmo like Sean. Yeah, right.
Well, now that he's giving his cell phone out, I think he's getting hit up 1,000 times per day now.
Yeah. And so I just asked him, you know, what's a big hairy problem? What's something that kept him up at night and would really, really help the company? And at the time, you know, the two biggest brands that were working with Vayner were Unilever and Mondelez. And Mondelez just had this big growth opportunity. We had around 3 brands at the time. Bonin Bo, shout out to Bonin, who's a brilliant marketer himself and investor now. But he was there leading the charge. And so we were working with a lot of the teams there. And over a year and a half, we increased it from 3 brands to 12 or 13 brands.
Wow.
You know, 4x the rev, and a lot of the people that they selected and also I helped to hire and train up ended up starting new departments. You know, Mondelez, even though it's like cookies, crackers, gum, and candy, you know, things like Ritz crackers and Sour Patch Kids, like Trident gum. These are things that if you can get someone to care about high frequency, low consideration products,
right?
You can sell a Ferrari, you can sell lingerie, you can sell a Rolex, right? Like, but if you can do it with something that's like really like commodified, I really believe that you as a marketer can do something really, really special. So yeah, from there we ultimately did some of the very, very first Vine campaigns, Snapchat campaigns, influencer campaigns. We were working with you know, Logan Paul was one of our Rudy Mancuso. Yeah, he was still living at home when we're working with him.
That's
he was
right.
still
He was
in
like
Ohio.
the marquee, like, can Gary turn? Yeah. It's like, let's be honest, we're all nobodies in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm not dissing him when I say it, but can Gary V, with all of his magic, turn a nobody into a viral international sensation?
Yeah.
It was an awesome ride to see that.
Yeah, it was cool. He was, you know, Logan's obviously an international global sensation now. I don't even know if he remembers the campaign he did with us for Sour Patch Kids, but, you know, we were very, very thankful to work with him, and he was always willing to kind of go above and beyond, and we had a great experience with him.
So there's so much there. You're such a great storyteller, and I really appreciate that, but there's a lot here to unpack, Sean. One of the things that as I did some research on your background, I saw that you really do enjoy creating brands. You enjoy being part of the process of creating some sort of forward-facing, you know, consumer-facing image or message. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And so so my assumption therefore was that moving into venture capital away from Razorfish and BBDO allows you to do that with more, be a part of many more stories. And so obviously working with Gary V, which I have to ask, is he as like intense and as hardcore as he is on TikTok? Because I'm telling you, the guy's like always on. Is this a reality?
I would say in person there are notes, and if you think of Gary as a human personification of wine, he has tinges of love and joy, and I actually think people don't realize that about Gary, is that he's one of the most loving and caring people you will ever meet, which I actually think is a big secret of his success, and also why founders and investors and like many of his longest clients from the brand side, like love working with him and the broader team. And obviously he's a practitioner too, right? He goes wide and he goes deep, and he knows what the heck he's talking about. So when someone stress tests why something is hitting, he's been gathering thoughts and information for usually months, if not weeks, or even longer. Just the tool is slightly different, and it's still just around attention. And so in working with Gary, like, he is always thinking a mile per minute. He's the only person I've been able to see effectively take like 5 and 10 minute meetings and get things done, and also make people feel motivated, solve problems, and also have a substantive like movement on key decisions, which is incredibly hard to do, right? Having 5 and 10 minute meetings.
Well, I don't want to be the Gary V show, but I obviously greatly appreciate what he's done, his influence in the market. And so let's move from focusing on him to his influence on you. You helped him build his first, I think it was $25 million, right? $25 million fund. So tell me, what are some of the lessons that you were able to extract from that experience with one of the best in the game?
Yeah, I mean, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so being surrounded by him and the broader team, like being able to just watch going through thousands of deals, seeing what it was like to build even my broader network from scratch. I think a lot of it was thinking probabilistically, seeing Gary and also the broader team thinking in thematics. Things that people would be willing to pay for in time, or vice versa, right? What are things that will save you time was a big question mark at the time. What were the things that were going to work? And then also, how do we ourselves drive the value in the company? So in addition to the actual investing part, we actually incubated a little bit. And so one of the biggest successes there was probably Resi, which got acquired by Amex. And so that was incubated within Vayner RC. Helping to connect the dots with brands, with some of those key relationships. And so instead of just wishing and hoping and predicting, you as an investor and as a team, I know Gary and the broader team like really did an excellent job of giving them a shout out and helping them also take it to the next level. So, a lot of love for, Ben and the broader team for just doing such an amazing job with Resi.
I would think that was probably part of the bigger plan with Gary, right? Is that he's now has the opportunity to have better inbound, or at least a more focused funnel of inbound opportunities, deal flow, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously having the funding, you can start incubating based on ideas, based on all the deal flow, based on people that, there's just all the networking and all the stuff that happens there. It kind of makes sense to say, look, if we are this gravitational force of deal flow, man, we can start really leveraging all this knowledge that's coming in and start incubating and creating our own. So I would assume that was part of a larger thing.
Yeah, it's all reputation, right? I mean, I think both Mike and Ben, the founders of Resi, they had known Gary for a long time, I think even before that. And, Ben coming from building and scaling Eater, he knew and loved food and wine. And I think they always wanted to do something together. And Mike coming from CrowdTap before with Irving Fan, and New York is a small place, and so your reputation is kind of everything. And that reputation of wanting to do business with someone over and over again, I think is what has led him, and also a big thing that has led me into hopefully picking the right relationships and the right people to do business with, and hopefully having long-term gains with long-term people.
Long-term gains, that long-term hodl, guys. Actually, that's a great segue. So we've talked a lot about your experience at VaynerMedia with Gary Vaynerchuk. Man, I'm sure that we could probably talk for hours or even days about all the experiences, but you've moved on. And now you're in the DeFi, the decentralized protocol space, the cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that fun stuff, distributed ledger. Tell us, how did that transition happen?
Going from Gary Vaynerchuk to Joe Lubin is probably the most odd switch up that almost anyone has ever had.
From like hype personality to like chill.
And both just brilliant men. I mean, both of them just have a vision for the world and just this grit to make it into a reality that I just respect so much. But I started paying attention to blockchain and crypto through the fund. Gary was able to get us an allocation into Coinbase. Yeah, thankfully through the introduction of the USV team. And from there, I was also paying attention to a lot of frontier tech. So VRAR, AIML, esports, voice. And so I had gotten invited to a dinner with an author named Paul Vigna, who wrote In the Age of Cryptocurrency. And it was the week that he and his counterpart had quit Wall Street Journal. And it was in this schnazzy private club. I was definitely younger by 30 years than anyone in the room. Everyone was a high net worth client of this hedge fund that had invited Paul for dinner to explain Bitcoin. And he was going to break it down. And he was like, well, is this an opportunity? Should we do it as individuals? And I was just floored. I just couldn't believe just everything that he was saying. And the room went from like, what's this, like Silk Roady type, like money laundering thing. And then as he unpacked it, the room was just like, wow, this is interesting. We should dig more in. Yeah. So that changed my mind.
What you're saying is that Bitcoin is not a scam.
No. I think this is even before, like maybe a little after Mt. Gox, but yeah, it was definitely, at the time still kind of in the question mark category. And so having a thoughtful discussion around highly skeptical people that had no reason to diversify into the asset class at the time just yet, other than, oh, it's appreciating and it's at like $1,000 or $1,500 or whatever. We've seen it happen like 3 or 4 times now. Is it going to happen again? It was definitely just fascinating to watch a room that had built an immense amount of wealth off of traditional finance open their minds to something that was much, much more mathematically, cryptographically, and technologically driven that they had never really considered before. Oh,
for sure. I mean, the entire idea of blockchain, distributed ledger, all of this is a paradigm shift to the old world because it's the centralization versus decentralization idea. So now that you're in as a partner with ConsenSys Labs, obviously investing, deploying capital into decentralized protocols, blockchain projects, and the like, what are you finding in the cryptocurrency world in terms of what's happening? Where do you see it going for 2020? Now that we're I can't believe we're almost already there, brother. But 2020, I remember reading about 2020 when it was 2012, 2015, 2016. People were all saying, 2020. Yeah. So tell us, you're in it.
Yeah.
Where's crypto going?
Well, after seeing Ethereum ascend, driven a lot by some of our products that we had incubated internally, Infura, MetaMask, Truffle. We saw the killer use case was fundraising, right, with ICOs and the ICO boom. After that, I would say right now the hot topic is decentralized finance, right? Like people be your own bank as much or as little as you would like. It's a spectrum, right? Being in a bank is a lot to do and a lot to take on, because most people take it for granted, right? Most people don't understand all the intermediaries and all the services that a bank provides. It's all kind of just baked in. And now we're kind of seeing this unbundling where people are like, well, things haven't changed for so long. And by the way, I actually want to move on the spectrum a little bit from having almost no control to having all the control, to custodying, to thinking about settlement and transfers and remittance. And there's a lot of areas of innovation that are happening. And then when you put identity and your own personal data into the blender, those are all things that we need to be paying attention to, especially if, like Andrew Yang might say, is modern digital gold, right? Like our data is the oil of the 21st century. For sure. And so, I mean, obviously I'm in crypto. I believe in the long-term all hail Bitcoin. In terms of the shit coins, who knows about those? Those? But I have to ask this question. It's more from all of this is coming from my personal gut anyway, but how much influence
on ConsenSys and all the work that you do in investing is affected by the Vitalik, let's say the influence of Vitalik, right?
Yeah.
And his sayings and his musing is what's going on. I'm sure there's some distinction there, but I've always been curious because, you know, this is an investment arm. There's a lot of Ethereum being thrown around everywhere for sure. And so I'm just curious, how does, you know, Vitalik's influence affect the investment thesis or the deployment of capital within ConsenSys?
I think greatly. I think Vitalik and Joe are deep friends. I think multiple ConsenSys people have great relationships with ETH Global, and also the foundation. I think the foundation itself has done an excellent job of fading into the background. You know, Aya, the lead and managing director over there, has this whole saying around subtraction culture, and I think Vitalik selected her because she wanted the foundation to be the embodiment of a protocol, Ethereum, really kind of fading into the background and saying, hey, this is more about what gets built on top and you all as individuals than it is anything else. And, you know, many of the people that are originally joined are longtime Bitcoiners, are total believers in Bitcoin, but they're not Bitcoin only people, which I think, you know, is kind of the distinction, right? Many of them think if gold is akin to Bitcoin, then Ethereum potentially could be that closer to that of money or payments or a global settlement layer, right? So we're hyper aware of some of the things that have happened, right? It takes a long time for the layer one to harden. We are talking about bleeding edge things that need to be battle tested, right? I love the Bezos saying of like one-way versus two-way doors, right? The protocol layer, especially once you make a decision, it's not that you can't reverse it forever without a hard fork or whatever, but it takes sure as hell a lot more effort in order for something to switch. And so we want to be very, very intentional and careful if you're thinking about building a system that's supposed to like live for decades and decades, if not hundreds of years, if possible, right? And so we definitely pay attention to all the innovation that's happening at the layer one stage. So we just came back from DevCon in Osaka. So much of it was about ETH 2.0, optimistic rollups, cross-chain solutions. It was just a wonderful time for founders and companies to kind of share their latest and greatest. It's one of my highlights every year that really showcases the breadth and depth of talent coming from not just the Valley, not just New York, not just London or some other major market. These are founders from every like tribe and tongue, every corner of the world. Like it is a beautiful mosaic that feels very kumbaya-y, but I mean, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I really enjoy it.
I think, well, I could say that you drank the Kool-Aid, but then again, I'd say that I drank the Kool-Aid. I think there's enough rational proof and logical proof that Bitcoin as a protocol will continue. This has always been my, let me give you my spiel. Bitcoin's a protocol, just like the internet, and the internet is expanding to new worlds, new demographics, new people groups every day. And likewise, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and whatever, I'm just using that as a catch-all, as a protocol will continue to expand ad infinitum to all the corners of the globe. And so for me, it's a mathematical truth. And the question is you use the word battle tested, are you willing to be part of the long-term hodl, the long-term battle, right? The long-term fight for something that we believe, at least in the values of decentralization, we believe are so important. Important. So I'm going to ask you this question. What are you seeing that's exciting in cryptocurrency today? What's something that you're just like, whoa, this is like super juicy that's coming down the line? Do you have anything like that in your mind? Anything that you could share?
Yeah.
Is it one of your own investments? Because that's always good too.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the ones I'm most excited about is the 3box team. So
tell me about
Michael, Danny, and Oed, like they are shipping new features at a breakneck pace. I don't think I've ever seen a team ship as quickly. Almost every 3 weeks they have a new thing, and the team had been working on the problem of decentralized identity and self-sovereign identity for almost 4 4 years, 3-4 years. They were all part of Uport before, which, you know, working a lot with sovereign nations and central banks.
Right.
They're working with like Switzerland and Zug. Like if you were to get access to public resources, their versions of like Medicare, Medicaid, you're using Uport.
Right.
So shout out to them.
Maybe we should
But,
have him on the. We should have him on the show, man. We should interview him.
Yeah. But yeah, 3box is incredible because they said, you know, we were building a mobile interface, an API, and also these enterprise solutions, but why don't we focus just on developers and go B2B to C and focus and hone in on fading into the background, kind of similar to Aya and the subtraction culture. 3box isn't really looking to make themselves the center of attention. It's about the projects. It's about Aragon. It's about all these other people that want to say, hey, if I was to, what can you do with this technology that other people can't? Well, what if it's taking one sign-in, one login, one place to cache all your information and take it with you across every DApp that you've ever used? Like that can't be done right now. That is ultimately like, you know, the anti-Facebook, right? This is the cornerstone of OAuth. Like what happens when Datalogix, Epsilon, Axiom aren't making money off of you? And what is it, $7.50, like $9 per person? If you're looking at quarterly earnings calls for a lot of these ad-driven surveillance economies,
surveillance economies. Well played.
Yeah, like now it's all about, well, what does the user want? And theoretically, Brad Burnham, who is a partner over at Placeholder, also a co-investor into the company, you know, for him, he's like, well, there's major data network effects. Shout out to Matt from First Mark, like data network effects. When you say you have your search data, your purchase data, your social data under one roof, maybe the cost per person goes up from $7.50 per person to $70 because you have the most deep profile of a user, and the user has full control, permissioning, and says you can have access to this. And by the way, once I am done, and once I've allowed for you to use it into a model, a machine learning model or something else, at the end, I can take it back because of the distributed ledger. I can say this data is truly mine, and I can feel confident that it's not still sitting on a centralized server to be taken advantage of in a honeypot, right?
Exactly. And for everyone out there that's listening, I mean, this is a really, really juicy thing that has been talked about in 1,000 different ways in the cryptocurrency and decentralized community. We've always wondered about this idea of identity, right? And we can talk about the identity here, the digital identity, the perception, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all data. It's all bits and ones and zeros. And what we want to do is we want to allow for people to be able to control that, because we are now under no illusion. Your information, right? What you do, your purchase history, your behaviors online is valuable. And so everything that Sean is talking about is giving that type of control and ownership back over your data, and being able to leverage that data to say, hey, I want A, B, C to have access, X, Y, Z. You guys can't leverage me. You guys can't, grab data, scrape all my data and tell me what I need to buy tomorrow. Right. And so this is a powerful idea with identity, self-sovereignty, agency, and obviously ownership over own data. So this is, you know me enough to know that I love this stuff. So this is awesome. I want to back up just a little bit, because we're in the game of VC. You had a lot of great experience in the startup world. You had a lot of great experience in the venture capital world, helping VaynerMedia and Gary Vaynerchuk grow a $25 million fund. Now you're over at ConsenSys Labs, which is deploying money into the decentralized world. Have you ever considered growing your own fund?
I have. I think it's too crowded right now. I mean, there's 24x the amount of funds in just the last 10 years. There's a splintering of pre-seed, seed, seed plus. The average age from 0 to institutional round is 3.5 years now. The average size of a fund, 50% of seed-based funds are over $100 million. So is venture capital the best way, especially if you're in love with tokenization and if you're able to have increased levels of liquidity earlier, right? Do you need to play by the same rules, or is it more exciting to think about, wow, how does value get created and how do you distribute it properly, attribute the contributions of employees? Do you have to use the standard vesting and lockups? Or can you start to get even more creative with how you incentivize and create value? I would argue that those things that I just mentioned are a little bit more exciting than a standard 2 and 20, going to LPs and saying, hey, exit time horizon, here's 11 years of my life. By the time I get out of here, I'm 47, 40, that doesn't sound as as interesting. So I guess like a traditional fund, probably not. Maybe something that is more of a hybrid or starts to take advantage of some of these decentralized finance like pieces that are starting to be created right now. So yeah, it would be adjacent probably.
Well, and that, I'm really glad that you answered that way, because that is actually what I was hoping how you would answer, because coming and experiencing, right, the traditional kind of pre-seed, the funding models, let's put it that way. I'm wondering, in your view, what would be a great approach leveraging both the traditional model and the decentralized model that I'm sure you and I both know a lot about? What would that look like in your mind's eye? Or are we not just there yet? Because certainly Ethereum, you stated yourself, it was like the silver bullet for decentralized funding, and we got the ICO world boom, and all this stuff, and now we have STOs and all sorts of stuff. So where do you see it landing?
I think people are very creative, and I have a lot of hope in that people will always come up with new and brand new ways to create value. I think crypto hedge funds as a subcategory of the investment community of blockchain is fascinating. People that are actively trading tokens. Right. I think models where you're an active network participant, along with a investor, along with a equity investor, along with a creator mentality, like this spectrum of like value creation and also incentivization is one that can really change how people think about working together. So does it always have to be concentrated in one pocket? Maybe not. And I do think that there's some really interesting innovation happening with some of these funding mechanisms and a lot of the general partners at various funds, right? So if you think about, the storied existence of like Pantera or like the new kids on the block that also are well respected out of the Valley, like Paradigm or One Confirmation, and even some of the East Coast folks that take maybe a more active trading mentality, like a Block Tower out here or DCG in New York, or even some of the more traditional investors in Europe, like a Blue Yard or a Fabric. There are multiple different models. Even Coin Fund, right? Like they're doing generalized mining, and I think it's cool. I think it's really, really cool to see people kind of say, hey, just deploying capital, maybe not all that differentiated and awesome. Perhaps we got to get our hands dirty. Maybe we need to incubate a little bit. Maybe we need to participate within the network on an ongoing basis and say, we will be an active validator, a staker in perpetuity. And by the way, as you launch more features and as you have a more on-chain governance structure, maybe we'll be a part of that. I think that's really awesome. It's complicated.
It is.
Maybe not now, but like there's certain companies, like shout out to Live here, right? Like Eric and Doug, they don't really talk about blockchain in their pitch. They say 10x faster and 10x more secure. And then when people say, what, how did you do that? They're like, oh, well, we use this thing called blockchain. And they're like, oh, that's fascinating. It's like, well, sign this LOI and then we'll walk you through all the documentation. I'm like, okay.
Well, I love this, and you're speaking some tough language for anyone out there. We're both crypto buffs, so in my write up later, I'll maybe do a definition of terms. But I think what you and I are both, are clear on. I think you and I can both align on is that traditional finance is changing. Period. right?
Yeah.
We're moving to this decentralized world. We're moving towards opportunities where we can have decentralized funding, where we can have different mechanisms. And I don't know where it's going to land. I don't know where venture capital is going to land in all of this, but it's changing. It's changing.
Right.
So I want to be cognizant of your time. I got a couple questions. If you got a couple seconds, a couple questions to finish us out. Are you cool?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. The first one is, because we like doing digging on VC hunting.
Yeah.
On April 22nd, 2013. So we're going back, bro. April 22nd, 2013. You tweeted, "Daenerys Targaryen is my spirit animal." And here I thought Bruce Lee was the last dragon. What Daenerys Targaryen, your spirit animal?
Oh man, wow, that is a deep cut, man.
I got one more. I got one more after this.
Oh wow. I think she was, breaker of chains, and at the time we didn't know who she'd become though. And so back in 2013, I mean, maybe we were more similar, but now in 2019, maybe hopefully my idealism for the space in the world doesn't lead me down the wrong path.
Yeah, I was just, part of being a VC hunter is keeping venture capitalists accountable for what they say and see. So obviously Daenerys Targaryen, she had a great moment of coming out. She looked like she was going to be the savior. And then we realized she was actually going to destroy the world. So let's do this last one and then we'll let you fly. On December 24th, 2009. So we're going way back 10 years, bro. On Twitter, you said, "Is it a crime that I don't like paying for haircuts? This is my first $20 haircut in 8 years. I choose Playas in Chinatown." Why don't you like paying for haircuts, bro?
I don't know. I think it's an immigrant mentality. I always cut my own hair for all those years. And then at some point there was the cost of time and opportunity costs where now I pay for a $20 haircut.
You still go to Playas?
No longer Players. Now I go to the Elegant Barber in Park Slope. So shout out to those guys.
Elegant Barber.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Sean Chang, for being on the show. I appreciate it very much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Wow. Well, it was a wonderful conversation and hanging out with Sean Chang from ConsenSys Labs. It was great to hear his story from moving from startups to VaynerMedia, working with a worldwide sensation, Gary Vaynerchuk, and then moving into bleeding edge technology and cryptocurrency, working with ConsenSys. One of the things that I really loved about this particular interview is I'm coming from the crypto world. I know a lot about it. And so to be able to have someone who is that deep, really deep, working, living, breathing the decentralized world, the cryptographic world, deploying capital into decentralized protocols, decentralized projects, it makes my heart glad. It really does. Because this is a risky world. And I'm not gonna spend a ridiculous amount of time on this retrospective talking about it, but this is something close to my heart. Cryptocurrency in so many ways has pushed the envelope. It's moved the needle. It's what it has done. And if I want to look at a big meta play here, what has Bitcoin done since Satoshi Nakamoto wrote that white paper in 2008, 2009? He made technologists, he made people think differently about the world. He brought opportunities to do finance different, to do identity differently, to do data differently, to do transactions differently, to do peer-to-peer transactions differently. He changed the world. And so it's so great. Even though it's such a highly risky environment to invest in, it is great that we have people like Sean Chen with ConsenSys who are doing the hard work, doing the hard labor, deploying that capital into companies of the future. Do they have the same amount of chances of surviving as any other startup? Probably less so, because the technology in cryptocurrency is changing so fast. It's changing so rapidly. I really appreciated this conversation with Sean Chang, and I really enjoyed his experiences from VaynerMedia and a little bit of the insights to how Gary operates. He obviously learned a lot, and he he's met a lot of people, and a lot of people that he was giving shout outs to. That just shows his humility. It shows how much he understands the value of network and his appreciation and gratitude for other people helping him get to where he is today. One of the things that I found that I wish we had spent a little bit more talking about is his experience with Joe Lubin over ConsenSys. Now, moving from Gary Vaynerchuk, if you know anything about Gary, he's obviously big personality. Joe Lubin, not so much. He could be categorized as more of the intellectual type. And so it'd be interesting to see, and I should have, if we had more time, I'd love to ask questions around what he's learning from Joe and moving from one leadership style to the next. I really also enjoyed the conversation around financing and moving to decentralized financing, away from traditional ways of funding. I think, well, I'm not going to say it this way. I know for 100%, that financing and the world of financing, venture capital, funding and investing is changing. Now, do I know where it's going to land? Do I know where we're going to end up in the world of decentralized fundraising or venture capital as it stands today? No, I don't. But being part of it, I'm really excited about how that it's going to change, period. It's going to change, and there's going to be even more opportunities for individuals all over the world to participate in the investing and funding of world-changing applications. No longer are we only relegated to old boy networks and clubbed up deals. Cryptocurrency and decentralization can give us real power as investors, not only over our own money, but over the opportunity to invest in those future tech ideas. I do love his last answer to Daenerys Targaryen. Things change. Technology changes too. So I guess sometimes when you tweet something out like Daenerys Targaryen is your spirit animal, maybe you need to wait until the show ends. Maybe you need to wait until it all comes crashing down. I hope we have an opportunity to speak to the 3Box team in the future, and I'll be pinging SHAWN for that contact. It'd be great to see what they're doing with decentralized identity. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Chang from ConsenSys Labs just as much as I did. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Twitter, our TikTok, our Instagram. A lot of these things are posted. And also subscribe to our newsletter. We're gearing up and creating the machine as we speak. So I'm excited to be able to deploy our newsletter, hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so. And I'm thinking it might be a daily thing. Again, if you want more information on Chang or this blog or ConsenSys and everything that's going on, make sure that you find your way over to vchunting.com/Sean Chang. Thanks, guys. This was a pleasure. I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation, and I'll see you next time.